Hi! This is called Leave Me Alone. This is such a good book. It got a Caldecott Honor Medal, so it didn't get the one gold medal that they give once a year, but it was pretty close. So you know it's amazing. And it's by Vera Brosgol. And again, one name means she did both the words and the pictures. She's the author and the illustrator. And I think you're going to really like this book. Here's the title page. Leave Me Alone by Vera Brosgol. Once there was an old woman. She lived in a small village in a small house. With a very big family. What do you think this house is like? Do you think it's a quiet house or a noisy house? Look at the way look at her face. How does she feel about all those kids? She cracks me up. Winter was coming. That meant she had some very important knitting to do. But it wasn't getting done. Do you know what knitting is? Well, you can make things like scarves and sweaters and hats out of yarn by using two what we call knitting needles. And they kind of like do certain patterns with them and turn into actual sweaters and things that you can wear. So why do you think that she had some very important knitting to do if winter was coming? And it wasn't getting done. Why wasn't it getting done? Her grandchildren were very curious about her knitting. Were you supposed to hit the ball with a stick? Could you eat it? Could you make your brother eat it? Why did the ball get smaller and smaller as you chased it? The old woman was at the end of her rope. She really is at the end of her rope. So she made her bed as neatly as she could. She swept the floorboards until they more or less shone. She drank tea from her samovar. That's her samovar. She packed up her things in a big sack, and as she left, she shouted, "Leave me alone!" Oh, I think she was going cuckoo with all those lots and lots of kids while she was trying to do her knitting. The woman walked through the deep, dark forest. She made a fire so that she could see what she was doing. Then she sat down and she began to knit. The bear family was very curious about the light from her fire and about what she might taste like. She does not seem deterred. Leave me alone, the old woman shouted. But they didn't listen because bears don't speak English. So she picked up her sack and left. That's a funny story. The old woman climbed up the mountainside. It was cold, so she found a small, sheltered place. Then she sat down and she began to knit. Who's coming? The mountain goats were excited to have a visitor, especially one that brought snacks. They think the yarn is snacks. Leave me alone, the old woman shouted. Oh boy. She is not happy about those goats eating her yarn, is she? But the goats were too busy fighting over the red ones, which they all agreed were the best. So she picked up her sack and left. Look at this guy. I think he ate too much red yarn. The old woman climbed higher and higher up the mountain. And she reached the top and climbed onto the moon. I love how she just walked onto the moon from the mountain. I think that's very clever. She found a rock that was shaped like a chair. She sat down and she began to knit. The little green moon men had never seen a woman before, old or otherwise. They examined her with handheld scanners that went beep boop. This lady can't get a break. Wherever she goes, there's people or moon men in her way. Leave me alone, the old woman shouted. But the little green moon men couldn't hear her because they didn't have any ears. So she picked up her sack and left through a wormhole because there was just one there, randomly. Do you ever want to disappear through a wormhole? The void on the other side of the wormhole was very dark and very, very quiet. She was absolutely, completely, utterly alone. It was perfect. Looks like she's finally getting her knitting done. So she put the 30 sweaters into her big sack. She swept the void until it was a nice matte black. She had a cup of tea from her samovar, which apparently she brought with her. Then she picked up the sack and left through another wormhole that just randomly appeared, apparently. I love this book. It's so awesome. Oops. When she came out the other side, everything was right where she'd left it. And she didn't say a word. Look at all those kids. Oh, look at her face. How did it change? Why did it change? Look at all her kiddos, all her grandchildren. Look at the sack of sweaters she knitted. And she's giving out the sweaters she knitted. And there they all are. How did this character, the old woman, how did she change through this story? Often characters, and especially main characters, will change throughout the story. And it usually has something to do with how they're feeling. So I want you to think back. I want you to try to retell this story from the beginning. What happened first, second, third, fourth, and last, with details. And I want you to really think about how she changed from the beginning to the end. And there were some gradual changes throughout, right? So I want you to think about that. And I want you to tell your parents all about how this character changed. All right, Leave Me Alone by Vera Brosgol. Awesome, funny book. Loved it. Bye.